Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's bpm'online user group. My name is Deneen Panarelli. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Technology Advisors. And with me today, we have Megan Sheehan, our trainer and business analyst and CRM guru. Unfortunately, Chris cannot be with us today, but luckily for you, Megan is a little CRM wizard and will be able to take over this presentation. So throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and enter them in that Q&A box. And actually, I see we already have one, and it's about whether or not we will have a recording of this presentation. And the answer to that question is yes. Yes, we will. I will most likely be emailing that out to you at some point tomorrow afternoon, along with any other materials that may be relevant. I'd also like to point out before we get started, on the right hand of your screen, there's some resources. There's a link to our next user group, and there's also a link to something that Megan's going to be referencing later in the presentation today. So feel free to click on those links at any time as well to get more information. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Megan to get started with the agenda.
All right, thanks, Deneen. So today we're going to be talking about folders and dashboards. So specifically, we'll be looking at both basic and advanced filtering, how to create and share folders, and how to create and share dashboards. We'll also be talking about new releases and upcoming releases, as well as upcoming events. And as Deneen said, if you've got any questions, please make sure to post those to the Q&A section so we can get those answered for you. I'm going to go through a couple of slides and then switch over to a screen share and demo some of what we're talking about here. So starting with filtering. Basic and advanced filtering are functions that you can use on any section list. So whatever section you're working in, when you have a list of data, basic and advanced filtering will both be available. Basic filtering is the easier to use filtering type. So it's very simple to use. It's quick, it's easy, and it does, of course, therefore have some limitations, because anything that's easy often means it's a little bit limited. Anything that's complex is a lot more powerful, but a little harder to use. So specifically with basic filtering, the two main limits here are that you can only search fields that are in the section you're searching, not connected sections. So for example, if you were searching, say, in the list of opportunities, you could search by any of your opportunity fields, but not by fields in, say, the accounts section, which are connected to opportunities. And the other limitation with basic filtering is that if you use multiple filters, the only way to combine them is with AND logic. Advanced filtering, on the other hand, can get as complicated as you want it to. So you can make some really complex queries with advanced filtering, and really the sky is the limit there. Whatever you can come up with, it's most likely possible if you can find the right way to do it. The other nice thing about advanced filtering is that you can save your filters as folders. We'll talk more about that in a second. A couple of things that I really specifically wanted to point out here. One is around grouping. So this is something that took me a little while to figure out when I first started learning how to use advanced filtering. If you want to group one or more of the conditions, I guess I should say two or more of the conditions in your filter together with some AND or logic specific to those two conditions, you use the Control button to select them, and then the Actions menu to group them. And I will show you how to do that. The other thing I want to make sure to point out, and again, I'll have some examples of this, is that with advanced filters, you can access those related sections. So we'll see that there's a plus button you can click in the conditions window to access those connected sections to pick which table or which section you want to connect to. Filters and folders really go hand in hand, so I'm going to do one more slide first and then switch over to the demo. Filters can be saved as folders. So folders are essentially just saved searches. Basic filters don't have a save as function. Only advanced filters have the option to save as a folder. So again, folders are essentially saved searches that you can access at any time. So that's going to save you from having to rebuild that search query every time you want to pull that list. Folders can be shared with users through the access rights setup. So you can determine which users can see the folder to use it. You could also allow other users to edit or delete folders, although you want to be careful about giving people edit and delete access, because if someone else changes that folder, it does change it for everyone that folder is shared with, including the original creator. And same thing with deleting. If someone deletes that folder, it deletes it for everybody. So most of the time when I see people sharing folders, they're just sharing the read permission to allow people to use the folders and not the edit or delete that would allow them to change or delete them. Even if I can't edit a folder, I can copy it. So that's a nice way to be able to take something that someone else has built and then tweak it for my own purposes. If you have lots of folders, you can also organize them into hierarchical folders. I'll show you that. And there's also a function to be able to favorite folders. The nice thing about favoriting folders is it makes them easier for you to access.
Sorry to interrupt you. Is everyone seeing the slides that she's showing right now? If not, don't panic. I will send you this recording, but I'm just curious if it's working. If for some reason you're not seeing the slides, can you just chat me so I can know how many people are having issues? Sorry, go on.
That's okay. And the last thing I want to say about folders before I jump over to BPM Online is that most folders are dynamic folders, meaning they're search-based. So if any new records meet the criteria of that search, they're automatically going to be included in that folder. There is also an option to create static folders. That's only available in contacts and a couple of other sections like employees and some of the administrator sections. Static folders allow you to manually add contacts or whatever records you might be working with into that folder, so you manually control who is or is not in that folder. So most folders are going to be dynamic folders, rule-based or filter-based, but there is also the option for static folders where the use case for that exists. All right, thank you for everyone confirming you can see the slides. It's reassuring to know that things are working correctly. We're going to go ahead and now start the screen share. So same issue there. If you don't see my screen come up in, say, the next 30 seconds or so, let us know in the chat window, because sometimes we've had issues with that before.
One tip is make sure that you have your Adobe Flash enabled. Sometimes that causes an issue if it's blocking it, and you can check that in the browser, or what is this called? Your address bar. Mm-hmm. It might show up in your address bar that it's blocking it. So try that first if you're not seeing anything.
All right, you should hopefully be seeing my screen by now. I've got BPM up online and in the account section right now. And I'm going to be going through some filtering examples. Before I do that though, I want to show you how you can turn on a count of how many records are in the list that you're viewing. When we're doing different search examples, it's helpful to be able to see. Sometimes the list doesn't look like it's changed much, but it actually has. So that is a function you can get to from the View menu, and it's under the Setup Summaries option. Within here, all you have to do is check this box to say Display Number of Records and save that change. And now over on that right corner, I can see how many records are in the list that I have up at the moment. All right, so we're going to start with the simple basic filters. Those are going to be right here in this Filters and Folders menu, the first option there, the Add Filter. When I click that Add Filter, it's going to pop up a list of fields that I can search by. Again, that list is going to be limited to the fields in my section that I'm searching. However, it's not going to be limited in terms of any custom fields you might have. Any custom fields you've added to that section are automatically available on that list. No additional setup is required for that. It's going to default to the name field because it knows that frequently that's something users want to search by. I'll do just a really quick example of that. The thing I want to make sure I point out about that is the name field does do a contain search, which is really handy. So it's searching for that value anywhere in the name, which means it doesn't matter if it's the first word or not. I know sometimes other systems will default to a starts with search, so it's nice that BPM Online defaults to that contain search. All right, I'm going to clear that filter out by clicking the X there and come back in and add a couple of other filters. I want to show you an example of how those filters get combined if I use more than one. I'm going to filter on the type field here. The type field is a pick list field, so it's going to bring up the list of options for me automatically. I can go ahead and pick the option that I want. Let's say we're looking for customers. as soon as I click an option that I want, it is applying that filter for me. So the list immediately updated at that point. I didn't have to hit enter or click anything else. And I can use multiple basic filters simultaneously. So I can come back into the menu and just add another filter and say filter on category. Once again, it's a pick list, so it'll pop up. I'll pick my value. And what I wanted to make sure to point out about that is this here is using AND logic. So the list that we're viewing right now is only data that is both marked as type equals customer and category equals A. If only one of those things is true or neither of them is true, they are not going to be on the list here. If I want to not be so restrictive and remove one of those filters, again, I can just click the little X icon on that filter to add it. There is also a tag filtering option. I'm not really sure why it's not under the filter menu, but for whatever reason, it's here separate. If you want to filter by a tag, you can just click into the tag box, and I tagged something as user group earlier. So here again, it would be combining these two different filters, so the type is customer and the tag is user group. If there were other records tagged user group that were not customers, they would not be showing up in the list right now. All right, let me clear those out. So again, basic filters, really simple, really easy, reasonably powerful for how simple it is to use. Where things really get powerful though and more complex capabilities is within the advanced filters. So to use advanced filters, you're going to go back into that same filter menu, but instead of clicking add filter, we're going to switch to advanced mode. And that's going to open this filter builder panel for me. So we can use advanced mode to do something just as easy. So I'm going to start off with the same example that we just did, which is customers who are in that A category. The way I would build that here in advanced filtering is I would click this add condition option. It will pop up a window for me to pick what field I want to search by. This is going to be that same list we were just looking at, and I can scroll or type through that list same way and pick the field that I want. It will then give me some options for what type of search I want to do. So this is another difference between basic filtering and advanced filtering that I didn't think to put on that slide, which is that I don't have to just do an equals search. I could do an it's not equals to, it's filled in, it's not filled in, and other types of searches based on the field type. In this case, I do want to do an equals search, so I'm going to just click on that question mark and then pick the value or values that I want to search by, in this case, customer. And then I'm going to repeat that process to add my second condition. So I'm going to click add condition, find the category field, and then select that A value. One thing that you might be noticing is that as I built out that search filter, it did not update the list on the right side of my screen. Advanced filters often, again, tend to be more complex. Rather than constantly querying the database as you're updating that search filter, it's going to wait for you to tell the system that you are ready to see the results of that. And the way you do that is by clicking the apply button here. So it only updates the list on the right when I click the apply button, telling it that I want to do so. And here you can see that we get those same 6 results for this search, whether we do it as a basic filter or an advanced filter. Again, one of the differences between basic and advanced filtering is the ability to use OR logic instead of AND logic. So it's still going to default to AND logic because that's the most common form of searching. Is when I have multiple conditions, I want them all to be true. But sometimes I want OR logic. Find me everyone who is marked as a customer or is category A. And so to change my search to that, I would just click where it says AND to switch it to an OR. And here again, if I want to see the list update, I have to click that apply button to make that happen. I'm going to go ahead and add one more a filter in here or condition in here before I move on to my next example, mostly because I didn't find a better place to put it and it's an important one to know about. So let me just switch this back to an AND search because it's more consistent with how we typically would search. And I'm going to add one more condition. I want to specifically talk about searching by the owner field. So the owner field, as you probably know, is the contact who represents the user who's responsible for this particular record. So who is the owner of the account. When you are doing advanced filters by the owner field, it's going to give you a couple of options that are going to pop up. And most of the time, you will probably want the bottom option, which is current contact. That current contact option is going to automatically search for contacts owned by the person who's logged in to BPM Online. This is really important when I go to share folders that might be based off of this filter, because when I'm logged in as myself, it's going to show me my contacts that are assigned to Megan. If Deneen logged in and was using the same folder, that current contact setting would show Deneen accounts that are owned by Deneen. And so that way you don't have to have, a different folder for each person with the same filters except for assigned to them or owned by them. You can just say use the current contact, whoever's logged in. In the scenario where you do actually want to pick one or more people and specifically say, maybe this is everyone in a specific team that I want to look at. How are people in my team doing? I can still pick specific contacts to find those people and filter to them. But more of the time, you're going to use that current contact setting. All right, I'm going to go ahead and clear these filters and then start from scratch with a new example. And I want to do a couple of examples where you are connecting to other sections in BPM Online, because I think this is really where advanced filtering becomes extremely powerful. So one thing that I might want to search for is a list of accounts that have open opportunities at the moment. And so that's something that I can do from the account section just by adding my condition here. And when I go to my add condition window, this time I'm not going to click into that column box. This is, again, the list of all of the different fields in the account section. Instead, I'm going to click this plus button next to the account table to be able to pick a connected object. So this is going to bring up a list of all of the other tables, all of the other sections that are connected to the account section. And I can search within that to find what I'm looking for. Sometimes, and opportunities is an example of this, you're going to see the same section listed repeatedly. That happens when there are multiple links between the sections. So in the case of opportunities, there is an account for the opportunity, which is who are we selling this to, or hoping to sell this to. There's also the option to link an opportunity to a partner account, as well as to a competitor who won the opportunity. So I have to pick which of those links I want to use, in this case, who the opportunity is with, who the account is, before I can move on to the next step. Once I've picked the section that I want to connect to, the column list here is going to have a few options for me. Most of the time, the option that you're going to choose here is quantity, and we'll see more about that in a second. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick that. So you can see here, it now is listing the section that I'm connected to. And because I picked quantity, it's going to give me this count option. This would allow me to say something like find all accounts that have more than 3 opportunities, or more than 10 opportunities, however many I want. I can also do more than 0, so just they have some. And I can do that by typing count is greater than 0, just clicking on here and typing the 0 in there. Or if I click on the count option, there's also an exists setting, which is the exact same as doing count is greater than 0. There's also a does not exist, which we'll use on the next example. Now, right now, if I apply this search, I am asking the system to find all opportunities, or all accounts that have any opportunities. But what I was looking for was accounts with open opportunities. And so I need to add another condition in here to say only look at the open opportunities.
You'll see that we now have 2 different plus buttons where we can add conditions. The first one is where it was before, so in line with the other conditions. And this would allow me to add new conditions at the account level. So if I wanted to go back and add in another condition, account type or category or any other account field, or even connect to another section, I would do that from here. However, I want to add a condition that's specific to this opportunity count condition. And so I'm going to do that at this plus button that's sort of embedded underneath the opportunity condition. When I do that, it's going to bring up a list of opportunity fields instead of a list of account fields. And so if I want to look for open opportunities, I can do that with the stage field. And then I can either do equals or does not equal and pick the stages that I want to include or exclude. It's not going to matter whether I do equals and pick the open stages or not equals and pick the closed stages. So whichever one is faster or easier for you is fine. And we can click the apply button to see that list update with the current conditions. All right, I'm going to start over again and do another example, another one where I'm connecting to a section. And this time I'm going to look for all accounts that don't have any activities in the last 90 days. So this might be a good follow-up list, you know, if you want to make sure you're reaching out to all of your customers every 90 days or whatever the time frame might be. To do that, again, I'm going to use the plus button here in the condition builder to connect to the activity section. And I'm going to use the quantity option again. And this time, instead of doing a count or exists option, I'm going to do a does not exist because I want to look for accounts that don't have corresponding activities. Now I need to put some activity or some conditions in around those activities. So again, I'm going to use the indented or embedded plus button to do that. I want to put in a date filter. So I'm going to look for the due field and use that one. And when I'm filtering on a date field, I'm going to have a different set of options than what we've seen on some of the other fields, allowing me to specify relative time periods to search by. And that's really important, especially if we were going to save this as a folder, as a saved filter, because that way the time period would always adjust based off of the current time when I'm running that filter. So if I want to look for the previous 90 days, I'm going to go into the day section and find a day-based condition, and then I'll pick the previous days option here and type in 90. So what that means is today it would give me the last 90 days from today, but if I were to use this in, 3 months, it would give me the last 90 days from that point, so always relative to the current date. Again, we'd have to click apply to see that list update to reflect that search. All right, I want to do one more example, and then I'm going to switch over to talking about folders a little bit. So I'm going to jump to the contact section and do this example there. Jump back into that advanced mode. And this time what I'm going to do is do a filter for all of the primary contacts for accounts. So as you probably know, within every account you can mark one contact as the primary contact. So if I wanted to pull a list of all of the contacts who are primary contacts, this is how I would do that. Here again, we're going to use the plus button to connect to another section. We're in the contact section now. We want to filter based off of an account condition. So we're going to go ahead and search for account here. When I do that, you're going to see we have a couple of different options, and I want to talk about the difference between two of these. That's pretty important. So the account section, if I pick that, would be all contact to account connection, so not just the primary contacts. If I want to find all contacts where the accounts were in a certain industry or a certain city or whatever other account condition, doing that first option, the account section, would allow me to do that. That's actually not what I was going to do for this example. What I wanted for this example was to only find primary contacts. And the way that I can do that is instead of using the general account connection, I can use the connection to the account section by the primary contact column. And that way only contacts that have that relationship to an account of being the primary contact will be included in this search. And then I can either do count is greater than 0 or do exist, whichever I prefer. Go ahead and apply that. And this would now be a list of all of the contacts that are primary contacts for their accounts. I'm going to go ahead and save this search as a folder and move into talking about folders a little bit. So I'm going to click the Save As button here to do that. And give my folder a name and click the OK button here to save that. When I do that, it's going to switch into the folder menu. So I'm in a different view now than I was a second ago. And I can also just get into this view at any point by going to the Filter Folders menu and clicking Show Folders. So if I didn't just save a folder, this is how I get into the list of all my folders. So here, again, this is just a list of all of the folders that have been created that I have access to as a user. I can click on any of these folders to update the list that I'm viewing on the right, to apply that folder. That is going to be running that search that the folder is based off of. I can go back and modify a folder that I've created or that I have access to modify with the gear button when I am looking at that folder. So setup filter would go back to the filter builder view where I could go ahead and change the conditions of that folder. I can also rename the folder, move it into a folder of folders. These ones that have plus buttons here, this is just an organizational technique. You can have a folder with some saved folders inside of it, some saved searches inside of it is another way to think about it. I can copy a search to create a slightly different version of it. That's really helpful sometimes if maybe someone shared a folder with me and it's close to what I want, but I want something a little bit different. I can copy it to leave their folder the way it is, but create my own version that's a little different. I can delete it, or I can set up the access rights to control who has access to do those things. So let's go ahead and look at that. Like I said, the most common access right to share would be the read access right, because that gives people the option to use your folder. If you give them edit or deleting rights, that does allow them to change the folder, which would impact your use of that folder as well. So you want to be pretty careful about who you give edit and delete rights to your folder to. If someone else deletes your folder, it's going to be deleted. It's going to be gone. You won't have it anymore. The default sharing on the folders when they get created is based off of the way you have roles configured. It looks like mine automatically shared this folder with all employees, but we'll just pretend that didn't happen. If I wanted to share this folder with somebody, I would just come up here to the new menu and say that I wanted to give a new read access right. That's going to pop up a window with a list of both users and roles in there. So I can share this folder with everyone in a role, and that includes both organizational roles and functional roles. Or I can pick one or more specific users to share with. So I do have some users in this list as well. So we'll just go ahead and pick the finance role and go ahead and select that. You'll see that gets added to the permissions. And we'll save that change. One other helpful thing to note for the folders is you can share them. Sorry, you can favorite them. Favoriting them, you do that by clicking the star icon next to the folder name. So let me just favorite a couple of these. And what that does for you is it becomes a shortcut. So if I close out of the folder view, just kind of reset my view to normal here, the favorite folders that I have are added to this menu. And so rather than having to go into show folders and click on them, I can click on them directly from this menu. So it's a little time saver, saves you a click or two by having a couple of your commonly used folders as favorites. If you don't want something to be a favorite folder anymore, you're not using it, you can always come back in here and unclick the star to remove it from your favorites. All right, I do want to do a quick example of copying a folder. I mentioned that you can do that, but it is pretty helpful to know what this is going to do for you. So let's go ahead and copy this. It's going to pop up first asking me what I want the name of my copied folder to be. I'm going to do key accounts or something like that. Save that. It'll ask me if I want the same access permissions to be copied or if I want to kind of just set them back to whatever the default is based off of my permissions, my role. I'll go ahead and just say yes to that. And then it will bring up the filter builder with the filter from the previous folder already copied here. So we already have the account with primary contact exists here. And I'm going to go ahead and add a couple more conditions here. I want to do a quick example of grouping conditions. So I'm going to put some conditions in at the account level with my indented plus button here. I'm going to put a condition in for type is customer, and I'm going to add category is A or B, and I'm going to add industry is, let's just say banks. So right now, all three of those conditions would have to be true. What I want to do is I want to say that I want anyone whose category is A or B or in the banking industry, because I'm really focused on the banking industry for whatever reason. So what I need to do in order to group those together is I need to select them. So I can click on the first one, just kind of clicking in the white space around it, and then hold Control while I'm clicking the second one to select both of them. Once I've selected them, I can come up to the Actions menu and then pick the Group option. And that will add a new grouping. It will indent them even further with its own and. Everything's always going to default to and, but again, to switch that to an or, I just click on it. So now what this is saying is find me all primary contacts where the account type is customer, and then one of these two things is true. Either it's an A or B, or it's in the banking industry. And we'll go ahead and save that, so that saves into my folders. All right, one last thing I want to make sure I show you with folders is those static folders. So again, a static folder is one where you manually add or remove people from that folder, and that's only available in the contact sections and a couple of others, employees and a few of the administrator sections. So pretty much just in the contact section for most people's usage. So the way I would do that is I would just go into this new folder menu and create a static folder, give it a name, and right now that folder is empty. So what I want to do is get back to a list that has people on it, wherever my people are going to be found, whether that's through a folder or just a list of all contacts. And then I need to select the people that I want to add to the folder. The easiest way to do that, I think, is to go to the multiple records selection option, and then you get checkboxes where you can easily pick multiple people from the list. And then once you've picked the people you want to add, you'll go to the Add to Folder action, find your folder, and select them to add them. Now, once they're in there, you could also go into the folder and remove them, so they don't have to stay in there forever. I apparently created that as a subfolder of the other one, so there it is. Didn't realize that's what I did. I may want to move that just into the all so that it's not indented because it's not really connected to that one in any way. And you can see in the icons here the difference between these two icons. So static folders are just a folder icon. The dynamic folders, the one that are query-based, have the little magnifying glass there. So when you're looking at your list of folders, you can easily tell the difference. Okay, I think that wraps up the examples that I want to do on folders and filters. So we're going to move on to talk about dashboards. Dashboards allow you to pull data together and display them in different ways. There's a variety of different widgets that you can use on your dashboards. We're going to see several different examples of those. There are dashboards in a couple of different places in BPM Online. So the first place you've probably noticed them is that there is a dashboards section that you'll see in your navigation bar. The dashboard section allows you to create just general global overall dashboards. And the nice thing about that is you can easily pull together data from multiple sections. So you can have, leads and contacts and opportunities all displayed on a single dashboard. The dashboard section is also accessible on mobile. So any dashboards that you create in the dashboard section, if you have the dashboard section set up for mobile, then you'll see them on your mobile app, on your phone or your tablet. The other place you can set up dashboards is within any section. So within any section, when you're on the list view, there's an option to switch to a dashboard view, and I'll show you what that looks like. The dashboards within another section are not accessible on mobile, but they do allow you to use the folders and filters function that's available in that section to change the set of data that you're looking at, and the charts and things on your dashboard will update as you apply those folders or filters. So that's pretty nice too. The dashboards within a section generally are all data that's in some way connected to that section, because otherwise, obviously, that filtering wouldn't work. So typically if you're, say in the account section, your filters are things that are either about the accounts themselves or connected data like opportunities for those accounts or things like that. Common widgets that you'll see on dashboards include charts of various styles, metrics, which are single number calculations like the number of open opportunities or the number of leads created this week or something like that. Gauges allow you to track progress towards a goal, and then lists of data. So we're going to set up examples of each of these here when we get into BPM Online in a minute. And when we do that, you're going to see that in a lot of ways, setting up dashboard widgets is pretty similar to setting up filters. A lot of the setup is actually around creating a filter for that widget, and the filtering function is exactly the same. So you build the filters the exact same way, which is really nice because once you are comfortable with the idea of building filters, building dashboards is very easy to learn at that point because it's very similar. And dashboards have pretty similar sharing setup. In terms of how you share them, it's the same way you go to the access rights, and the same thing is going to be true here, whereas if you just want someone to be able to use the dashboard, you want to give them read access. If you give someone edit dashboard and they change the dashboard, give someone edit access and they change the dashboard, it would change it for everyone it's shared with, including you. If you give someone delete access and they delete the dashboard, it would delete it for everyone, including you. So again, you want to be pretty careful about who you allow to edit or delete your dashboard. All right, so I'm going to start with the section level dashboards, and then we'll go to the dashboard section after this. And I'm going to go into the accounts section. I'm going to clear off my filter here so I've got the full list, and I'm going to go into the dashboards by clicking this icon here at the top of the screen. So this is a switch back and forth button here, the list view versus the dashboard view. And within the dashboard section, you're going to see there are a few different dashboard tabs set up here. These are all standard dashboards that may or may not exist in your system. They may have been removed if they were deemed irrelevant. You may have other dashboards that someone has set up already in your system. And so you can click on any of the tabs to see the data that's there. Here again, you can see those different widget types. We've got a chart, we've got a list, we've got a metric. I think this one had some, same thing, metrics and charts on it. And again, the nice thing about the section level dashboards is that they work with the folders. So if I take this, whatever the sample records favorite folder is here, and I apply that, you can see that the numbers and charts on my dashboard all instantly updated because now we are only talking about the data in this folder, in this filter. So I can do that with any filter or folder. I can even, create a filter from here on the fly and see those metrics update. And so that can be really handy when you're trying to look at, comparing one group to another, for example. You can do that really easily. The dashboard section, again, is accessible on mobile, whereas the section level dashboards are not. The other main difference, I think, with the dashboard section is you often see data from more sections pulled together that may not have a direct link between them, but they're things that, all influence each other. For example, for sales, the number of leads is important, the number of opportunities is important, the size of the pipeline is important, but there's not necessarily that direct data linkage between how many leads you've got that are currently leads versus how many opportunities you've got. They obviously went through the lead stage, but they're not directly linked. And so it's not going to require any sort of linkage here. You can pull together any information that you want on these different dashboard pages. And here again, you can see a variety of different dashlet types are here. Let's just go ahead and create a new dashboard. So I'm going to go to the gear button there on the upper right, give my dashboard a name. And right now, this is just an empty starting point. So I need to build out my dashboard. And so I'm going to click the plus button here to do that. It's going to give me a list of all of the different things that we can add. And I'm going to start with just adding a couple of metrics. So again, a metric is a single number calculation. It's probably the simplest one to add, which is why I'm starting there. And whenever we're working with our dashboard, it's always going to ask us to pick what object we want to pull the data from. So what section do we want to pull the data from for this particular widget?
So let me give this a name. What I'm going to do is the number of open opportunities. So that's obviously going to be the opportunities object. I can scroll through that list, but I can also, of course, do a type ahead search, narrow that down a little bit, and find the opportunity section. The function is going to allow me to pick how it's calculating the number off of that data. So I'm going to use a count for this one, but we'll do another example where we pick one of those other options. We're going to set up our filter. So if I want the number of open opportunities, I need to filter to only the open opportunities. And again, this is going to work exactly the same as the advanced filter section or function. So we can just click add condition here. It's going to be the same window that pops up where we can get our list of fields. If we want to connect to another section, we can click the plus button. Don't need that on this particular example. So I'm going to pick the stage field, and we'll do is not, and we'll pick the closed values here. So as we're going, you might notice that on the right side of my screen, it's doing a preview of what this is going to look like. That does update as I'm building, so I can see how the changes that I'm making affect that. And one other thing I might want to update here is the default formatting on these is 2 digits after the decimal point. I obviously can't have a partially open opportunity, so we'll go ahead and just make that 0 digits after the decimal point, make that an integer number. We'll go ahead and save that. Now when we add that, it auto selects how big it's going to be. For some reason, they make it nice and wide, but not very tall. So we definitely want to make this at least 1 or 2 boxes taller so that we can actually read what's there. And a metric actually probably doesn't need to be that wide, so we can shrink that down a little bit. It doesn't show you the actual widget itself here. It's just giving you the chance to resize it and decide how they're going to go next to each other. So if we want to see what that widget actually looks like, we need to actually save the dashboard to go into the standard view of it. And now we can see what my dashboard looks like. To go back into editing the dashboard, we'll go to the gear button and click the edit. And now we can click the plus button wherever we want to add another widget. So we'll go ahead and put something here. Actually, before I do that, I was going to copy this one and show you how that function works. So let's copy this metric. Once I click on it, I can then copy it. And let's also do how many dollars we have in our open opportunities. So how big is our pipeline in terms of dollars? So I'll rename this to dollars. There we go. And the way I'm going to change this to get the dollars is by changing the function that I'm using. So instead of doing the count function, I'm going to do a sum of all of my open opportunities. And then I'll have to pick which field to look at to do that sum. So I'll need to find the opportunity amount field and use that. Again, I may want to update the format on this. I can make that have a $sign in front of it so that it displays that, and I can put those 2 decimal points back in if I want those to display the sense of my opportunities, and then we'll save that. We can move around. It just randomly put this on here when I copied, but I can drag and drop this to where I want it to be. And again, I can resize it with the buttons here if I want to do that. Okay, so that's how metrics work. Let's next add a gauge to our dashboard. A gauge, again, is going to allow us to track progress towards a goal. And we're going to use activities for this one. We're going to do a completed meetings goal. So we're going to have the number of completed meetings. Meetings are tracked in the activities section. So my object here is going to be activity. And I will do a count since I want to do the number of completed meetings that have happened. I'm going to need some filters on here because I want meetings that have been completed. So I'm going to need to use the category to make sure that it's a meeting, and the status to make sure that it's been completed. And I probably also want some sort of time frame on this. I probably just don't want a number of meetings forever. So let's use the due date for a condition. And this could be whatever time frame you want. Take a quick second to talk about the previous number of days versus the current month or the current quarter. So if I did something like the previous number of days, and let's say I did the previous 30 days. The previous 30 days would always be a rolling 30-day period. So right now it's July 12th. So the previous 30 days would be, June 12th to July 12th.
If instead I did current month, that would always start over on the first of the month. So current month would be July 1st to July 12th. And so it would start over each month from scratch. I'm going to go ahead and use that one for this one. And so let's say I have a goal of how many meetings I need to have every month that I'm working towards. The last thing that I need to do to set up my gauge dashlet is to set up the goal itself. So first of all, I need to classify as, is this a goal that I want more of or less of? I want more meetings, so this will be the more the better. And then I need to enter a scale for how to size the widget. So I'll just do 0, 5, 10, 15 for now. And now we can see a preview of what this looks like. So you can see that right now, I've got one completed meeting this month. And the goals, the numbers that I entered in there become where the dividing sections are in my dashlet, in my widget, to define how good or bad I'm doing right now. Those don't have to be evenly spaced out. So I could have something like 0, 5, 15, 20, let's just say. And it will automatically adjust the sizing to scale according to the numbers that you've put in. All right, let's save that and make that a little bigger. And let's save our dashboard and see how this looks. All right, so far so good, I think. We'll go back in and edit. What I want to do next is do a couple of chart examples. So the first chart example that I'm going to do is going to be a pie chart showing me my leads broken down by what their need is. So we'll call this leads by needs. And to build out the chart, again, I'm going to start by picking what object I want to pull the data from, in this case, the lead object. My function here, again, how do I want to turn this into a number? I'm going to count my leads, but I could also do sums and averages. And then what type of chart I want, I'm going to do a pie chart for this one. Then I need to define how to group my data. So how am I going to take all of my leads and divide them into sections on my pie chart? Well, I'm going to use the customer need column for that. And so now I can see how many leads I have with each of the different needs that I've defined. I can add a filter to this if I want to do just leads in a specific time period, or leads that are still open, or leads that have been converted. However I want to define that. I don't need to add a filter, so I can save this right now and just have it be all leads for all time period. So let's go ahead and do that. Make that a little bigger again. And then I'm going to do a second chart example. I want to do one that's a little bit more complex. One of the neat things that you can do with chart widgets is you can have multiple data series on them. So that's really useful for things like comparing year over year, for example. So let's do an orders by month chart, and we're going to do the current year and the previous year so we can see them both and compare them. So we're going to do months here and dollars there. So I'm going to use the orders object for this. You can also use the opportunities, obviously, depending on how you're tracking that within your BPM instance. And I'm going to do the dollars here. So we'll do the total order amount. Let's go ahead and keep a line chart for this, and we're going to group it by the order date. When I pick a date field for my grouping, a second field is going to pop up asking me what time period of dates I want to group by. So I probably don't want to, in this case, do every hour or every day. What I want to do is every month. And so you're going to get a variety of different time periods that you can group by. It should be enough. There we go, to start to see what this is going to look like. So I have my different months down here. I've got the order dollars on the y-axis. And you can see it skipped some months here because there were no orders those months. If I want to show those on my chart, I can go ahead and say use empty value. And now we'll see the 0 months on here as well. And now this is still all of my orders ever. I want to filter this. So what we're going to do is we're going to have two different data series, one for the current year and one for the previous year. So let's go ahead and do the current year first. We'll do the order date. And we'll do current year. And let's label this current year. That'll show up when I'm hovering over it now. And then we're going to add a second series with this gear button here. And we're just going to repeat pretty much the same thing, except for the filter is going to be different. So this will be the order object. We'll do the sum of the totals. We'll group it by the date, the months, and we'll filter it to the previous year. So now we've got two different lines in here. Let's make them different colors so that we can easily see the difference. And let's label the previous year. So now we can see this year versus last year right here on a chart. Let's go ahead and save that. You're not limited to 2 series, by the way. You could have more than 2 series. If you had, other things you wanted to group by instead of years, for example, this year versus last year, you could do that as well. All right, there's one more widget that I want to show you, and that is the list widget. So this is what you would use to add a list of data to your dashboard. I'm going to put a list of my activities for the day. And I want to show a list of my activities that are due today or that are past due. So once again, I need to pick the object that I'm going to pull the data from. We'll pick the activity object. And then I'm going to need to set up a few things here. The first one is the columns that I want on this list. So this is very similar if you've ever done the column setup on your list in any section where you change what columns are displayed. You can just add any fields that you want to this list here with that plus button. So let's add the category. Let's add the due date. Let's add the contact. And then you can connect to related sections here. So I could, for example, pull in the contact phone number by clicking the plus button here, going to the contact object, and then picking the phone number. And when I do that, it's going to ask me how I want to label that. So I'll just call that phone. I can also go in and change the label of anything if I wanted to by clicking the edit button there, the pencil button. And it does show you a preview of what that looks like as you're building out the list so that you can get a feel for how wide you want different things to be, what order you want them in, whether or not you've pulled in the column that you thought you were pulling in. Once you're happy with that, we're going to click over to the display options. And there's a few things we have to set here. First, the sorting and number of records. So how many records do we want to show on this list before we have to click something to show more? What column do we want to sort by and what order do we want to sort them in? Let's put the oldest at the top here. And then how we want to filter these. So again, this is the same filter builder function. Let's do activities that have not been completed yet. So something with the status is not completed or canceled. And I want to do something based on the due date because I want things that are just due today or past due. The easiest way to do that is change this equal sign to a less than or equal to and say the due date is less than or equal to today. And then I only want my activities to come up on here. So if I use the current contact, again, that's going to allow me to share this dashboard and have it show each person their own activities for the day. Let's go ahead and save this and see what that looks like. I'm going to make that bigger again. And I'm also going to use this auto width button to make it the full width. So that'll automatically adjust it to take as much space as there is, depending on what it's next to. All right, let's see how we're doing here. Let's save this. And so we can see all of the different widgets that we've added here, our charts, our list, all of the information is available. One other thing that I forgot to point out before is that with your chart widgets, and this is true whether it's on your dashboard section or a section level dashboard, any chart widget does have drill down capabilities. So you can click on a section of a chart. It will ask you how you're going to want to visualize the data that you're drilling down to. So let's say I wanted a bar chart when I drill down, and then what column I want to drill down on. Say I want to drill down on owner, who owns these leads from that particular need, and I can see the data represented in that way. So you do have the option to drill down on any chart. And then the little back arrow will take me back to the original view. And if you wanted to share this dashboard with anyone, again, that would be in the gear button here. There's also a copy option in there. Set up access rights works the same way, so I would just add a new read access right to the user or role that I wanted to share access with. All right. I believe that wraps up everything that we were planning to cover in the dashboard section, as well as the filters and folders. So I always like to wrap up a user group by talking about what's new in the product. Since we haven't had a user group in a while, I've got a few different releases to talk about here. I'm going to kind of just go through these a little quickly. You'll have access to these slides as well. And the full release notes are available on BPM Academy. I tried to pull out some of the highlights that I thought would be most interesting or useful to people. So this first one is from the April release 7.14.0. A couple of updates to the core product. Text in multi-line fields is displayed with line breaks when you're editing in a list, so in a detailed view or a list view. There's also a new UI for the machine learning models. This is an administrator function where you can set up machine learning and edit how the machine learning is working. The two main areas where there is existing models for you to start with for that is in lead scoring and opportunity scoring. So doing predictive analytics on which leads and which opportunities are most likely to be successful. In the marketing product, there were some improvements on the cloud email service that will make emails send faster. The portal has gotten some changes around how you can configure access permissions. So you can set up different types of portal users now. This is for the customer portal or partner portal function if you're using that. You can have different portal user roles, and there's also the ability to allow customers or partners to have a portal administrator who can then configure certain things for their other portal users from their company. Also included in this release were some mobile changes. So on the mobile, the 10 most recent records will be displayed when you open a section unless you have a filter or folder selected. So that will get rid of the opening up a section and having it look like there's no data there that used to be the way it worked. And there's also some new offline functions where you can access recent records and create new records when you're offline. And a really nice change on the administration side, there's a new access permissions configuration interface. So you can still configure permissions through the advanced settings, the way you have done it if you've done it previously. But there's now a nice UI that makes it a lot easier to navigate, and you can access that from the system settings. In May, we had the 7.14.1 release. A couple of notable things in that release. On the marketing side, they've implemented automatic deduplication for event participants. So if you add multiple folders to an event and someone was in both of those folders, they'll automatically dedupe that list so that they only show in your events participants list once. They've also added new elements to the campaign builder. You can now modify and add records in bpm'online as part of a campaign. So if someone, say, opens your emails or clicks through your email and you want to add a new lead or update a lead or a contact based off of that change, you can do that. And there were also some enhancements for how emails are displayed on mobile devices. And then a follow-up to those portal changes we were talking about on those last slides, those portal administrator users, so your customer portal administrator or your partner portal administrator users can add or remove users for the portal from their company. And then finally, just recently announced the 7.14.2 release in July. Some core updates here include an ability to display aggregate columns and connected object columns in your editable lists, aka your details. some optimizations to global search to help that work better, and a change to the printables function. So the printables function has traditionally allowed both PDF and docx formats. Based off of usage patterns, there's really not a lot of people using the PDF function, so they've decided that that's not going to be available moving forward, unless you've already got PDFs that are using the PDF. Unless you've already got printables using the PDF function, in which case they'll still be available as PDFs. On the marketing side, they've added the ability to use macros in the sender's name and the email fields. So that would allow you, for example, to send each email from the contact owner rather than sending them all from a generic marketing email address or from a one person's email address. You can make them appear to come from different people. And for the automatic campaigns, the drip campaigns, they've added an ability to re-include someone who's sort of dropped out of a campaign, put them back in after a period of time. There's also an interesting new function being beta tested in the service product. This is specifically right now only available in the cases section, and again, it is beta, so you have to request it if you want this. But they've added the ability to use templates in the feed responses in the cases section. So that's something that I think, depending on how that beta testing goes, we might see that sort of spread out into other areas in the product where it might make sense. So I'm interested to see where that goes. bpm'online also recently announced a new product called bpm'online Studio Free. Essentially, this is a business process management tool or business process design tool. So if you've used the business process builder, the process library tool in bpm'online, it's the same process designer tool, only it's just designing the process, laying them out on screen. So if you're doing any process planning or system design, this is a really nice tool for being able to quickly and easily document those processes, what the steps are, what the flows are, who's involved in them. It is a free product, as the name suggests. You don't have to use it in connection with your bpm'online subscription. So you might be documenting processes that have nothing to do with bpm'online, and that's totally fine. And one nice feature that is built in is collaboration. So you can have multiple users that you've shared a process with, and they can all be editing that process simultaneously. So similar to working in Google Docs or Office 365 documents, where you can have multiple people editing at the same time. That same functionality is available here. I had enough to talk about already here that I didn't pull any of this into my slides, but I did want to make sure you all knew that bpm'online does also publish some information about what's coming for upcoming releases. So that link is here on the screen. It will be sent out with the recording. And you can see information on that page about what bpm'online has planned for upcoming releases. Nothing, tied necessarily to a specific release or a specific timeline, but still, it's always nice to know what's coming soon. All right, I think that pretty much wraps us up for today. Our next user group will be in September. We'll be talking about how to use business rules in bpm'online. So we'll make sure you have access to the registration link for that. You can always find that on our website as well, and we hope to see you there.